Mixed government is a form of government that combines elements of democracy, aristocracy, and monarchy, making impossible the respective degenerations. The idea was popularized during classical antiquity in order to describe the stability, the innovation and the success of the republic as a form of government developed under the Roman constitution. Unlike classical democracy, aristocracy or monarchy, under a mixed government, rulers are elected by citizens rather than acquiring the positions by inheritance or sortition. The concept of a mixed government was studied during the Renaissance and the Age of Reason by Machiavelli, Vico, Kant, Hobbes and others. It was, and is, a very important theory among supporters of republicanism. Various schools have described modern polities, such as the EU and the US, as possessing mixed constitutions. Ancient Greek philosophers, Plato in his book The Republic, divided governments into 5 basic types: democracy, government by the many; oligarchy, government by the few; timocracy, government by the honored or valued; tyranny, government by one for himself; aristocracy, government by the best. He found flaws with all existing forms of government and thus concluded that aristocracy, which emphasizes virtue and wisdom, is the purest form of government. Aristotle largely embraced Plato's ideas, and in his Politics 3 types are discussed in detail. Aristotle considers constitutional government the ideal form of government, but he observes that none of the 3 are healthy and that states will cycle between the 3 forms in an abrupt and chaotic process known as the kyklos or anacyclosis. In his Politics he lists a number of theories of how to create a stable government. One of these options is creating a government that is a mix of all 3 forms of government. Polybius argued that most states have a government system that is composed of more than one of these basic principles, which then was called a mixed government system. Roman era. The ideal of a mixed government was popularized by Polybius, who saw the Roman Republic as a manifestation of Aristotle's theory. Monarchy was embodied by the consuls, the aristocracy by the Senate, and democracy by the elections and great public gatherings of the assemblies. Each institution complements and also checks the others, presumably guaranteeing stability and prosperity. Polybius was very influential and his ideas were embraced by Cicero. Middle Ages. St. Thomas Aquinas argued in his letter on kingship that a monarchy, with some limitations set by an aristocracy and democratic elements, was the best and most just form of government. He also emphasized the monarch's duty to uphold the divine and natural law and abide by limitations imposed on the monarch by custom and existing law. Renaissance, Reformation, and Enlightenment. Cicero became extremely well regarded during the Renaissance and many of his ideas were embraced. Polybius was also rediscovered and a positive view of mixed governments became a central aspect of Renaissance political science integrated into the developing notion of republicanism. In order to minimize the misuse of political power, John Calvin advocated a mixture of aristocracy and democracy as the best form of government. He praised the advantages of democracy. It is an invaluable gift if God allows a people to elect its overlords and magistrates, to further safeguard the rights and liberties of ordinary men and women. Calvin also favored the distribution of power to several political institutions. Mixed government theories became extremely popular in the Enlightenment and were discussed in detail by Thomas Hobbes, John Locke, Giambattista Vico, Montesquieu, Rousseau, and Kant. Apart from his contemporaries, only Montesquieu became widely acknowledged as the author of a concept of separation of powers. According to some scholars, for example Heinrich August Winkler, the notion also influenced the writers of the United States Constitution, who based the idea of checks and balances, in part, upon the ancient theory. The Constitution constitution of Britain during the Victorian era, with a parliament composed of the sovereign, a House of Lords and House of Commons, is a prime example of a mixed constitution in the 19th century. This political system had its roots in two closely related developments in 17th-century England. First, a series of political upheavals: the Civil War, the Exclusion Crisis of 1679–81, and the Glorious Revolution of 1688. Second, an intense public debate about the best, most liberal and most stable form of government. Its main participants were John Milton, John Locke, Algernon Sidney, and James Harrington. The thinking became the basis of the radical Whig ideology. It described two sorts of threats to political freedom: a general decay of the people which would invite the intrusion of evil and despotic rulers, and the encroachment of executive authority upon the legislature. The attempt that power always made to subdue the liberty protected by mixed government. The American Revolution revealed that this radical Whig understanding of politics had embedded itself deeply in American minds. Radical Whig perceptions of politics attracted widespread support in America because they revived the traditional concerns of a Protestant culture that had always verged on Puritanism. That moral decay threatened free government could not come as a surprise to a people whose fathers had fled England to escape sin. 18th-century Whigs, or Commonwealthmen, such as John Trenchard, Thomas Gordon, and Benjamin Hoadly, praised the mixed constitution of monarchy, aristocracy, and democracy, and they attributed English liberty to it. Unlike Locke, they postulated a state of nature from which rights arose, which the civil polity, created by mutual consent, guaranteed. They argued that a contract-formed government and sovereignty resided in the people, so mixed government is the core of both the British form of modern-era democracy, constitutional monarchy, and the American model, republicanism. The father of the American Constitution, James Madison, stated in Federalist Paper No. 40 that the Constitutional Convention of 1787 created a mixed constitution. Madison referred to Polybius in Federalist Paper No. 63. However, much more important was that most ideas that the American revolutionaries put into the political system were a part of the great tradition of the 18th-century Commonwealthmen, the radical Whig ideology. Modern views. One school of scholarship, based mainly in the United States, considers mixed government to be the central characteristic of a republic, and holds that the U.S. has rule by the one, the few, and the many. Yet another school of thought in the United States says the Supreme Court has taken on the role of the best in recent decades, ensuring a continuing separation of authority by offsetting the direct election of senators and preserving the mixing of democracy, aristocracy, republic, and monarchy. European Union. According to a view, in the European Union context, the Commission President represents the rule by the one, while the Council represents the aristocratic dimension and the Parliament represents the democratic dimension.